On this warm summer's evening the Capulet house was the brightest place in Verona. The walls of the ballroom were hung with silk tapestries, and candlelight from a dozen crystal chandeliers threw rainbows on the heads of the masked dancers as they twirled through the music and laughter that filled the air. On one side of the room stood a young girl, Juliet, the daughter of Lord and Lady Capulet. Her face, flushed from the heat of the dance, was radiant, and her beauty was obvious to all who looked at her. A few steps away, a young man stood gazing at her. On the other side of the room, Tybalt recognized Romeo and saw him holding Juliet's hand. There was a terrible feud between the Capulets and the Montagues, and the Prince of Verona had forbidden any more fighting between the two families, on pain of death. That night Juliet couldn't get to sleep. She could only think of Romeo. It was warm and the moonlight was shining on the trees in the orchard below. The bell in the clock tower of the cathedral tolled twice. The main square of Verona sweltered in the hot sunshine and the air shimmered. Two young men were lounging beside a fountain. In a movement too fast to follow, Tybalt brought out his sword, and the two young men began to fight at a dazzling speed. That night the Prince of Verona passed judgment on Romeo. When Friar Lawrence heard the news of Romeo's banishment, he was deeply upset. He had already married Romeo and Juliet in secret, hoping that one day their love would overcome the hatred between the Montagues and the Capulets, but it seemed that the hate had been too strong. When the news of Juliet's death reached Benvolio, he rode straight to Mantua to Romeo. One of the travellers he passed on the way was a monk who recognized him. The monk watched as Benvolio galloped by on the road to Mantua. At that speed the monk judged Benvolio would be in the city before evening. It was almost midnight before Romeo grew calm enough to speak. He sat up and wiped away his tears with the back of his hand. Juliet hoped that Romeo's lips still had poison on them, and she kissed him so that she too could die. When Romeo and Juliet died, the hatred between the Montagues and the Capulets died with them. United by grief, the two families agreed that Romeo and Juliet should be buried together. On the statue of the grave, these words were carved: "There never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and Romeo."